Hello and welcome to March's live Q&A. My name is Lauren Gaggioli. I'm the host of the College Checklist and the founder of Higher Scores Test Prep. And I'll be helping you understand a few things about the changes that have come to the SAT. While I can't really dive into it with any specificity, because I was blocked from the test, I can give you sort of an overview what we know for sure, and then we can dive into any specific questions that you may have. I'm going to take just a moment to make sure everybody's with us and make sure we have sort of the lay of the land, as it were, with some of the features of this webinar. Because if you do have questions, I want you to be able to ask them. There's actually a chat box that you should be able to access. I believe it should be on the right-hand side of the video. And you can type a message in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and type a little something in, and I'm going to ask a question. And if you reply back, that'd be great. So just give me 1 second because I can't type and talk at the same time. It doesn't go well. So we just take a second here. So I'm typing in a little question about what grade you or your student are in, and if you have more than one student, let's say you're a parent of a couple of high schoolers, please include their grades as well as where you live. I would love to see where everybody is, where everybody's from. So if you go ahead and type a little something in just to confirm again that you are getting the chat, you do have that feature. I'm just going to go ahead and check over here. Great. Looks like we have about 10 people with us. It's a little bit strange to be doing this. I don't have, a VA or anybody helping me. So I have to keep an eye on the tech, and I also have to keep an eye on the chat. So if you see me stop at any point and sort of freeze up, that is why, because I'm trying to make sure everybody's with us. But we're going to go ahead. Awesome. See some of you checking in. Great. A lot of Floridians here. Very nice. Okay, so I have some juniors in the mix, and you guys are what I'm lovingly calling the guinea pig year. It's unfortunate to me that all of these changes that are happening are occurring kind of all on top of one another, and a lot of them are affecting you. So for those of you who are at a public school who's instituting Common Core, that's a challenge, right? That's a huge change, and it's something that's really, I think, hit the juniors harder than anybody else. We also have the changes to the SAT that were just rolled out this past weekend for the very first time. I was actually scheduled to go in and take that test. However, last Monday, even though I'd been registered since December, last Monday, College Board sent me an email and said that, oh, sorry, we know you've been blocking this date off, but we're not allowing you to come in. We only want students who are college bound to be taking the test, which if you got my email, if you're on my email list, there's really two reasons that may have happened, and we have no way of knowing which reason it is. The first is one that I think is probably the more legitimate one, that having a bunch of testing pros in the field on test day is going to skew the curve, especially because a lot of us have been saying to our students, don't go take it. Well, for those students who didn't get the memo and were going to take it, they would be up against a bunch of 99th percentile scores. Those of us who teach this, we're good at this test. And so there would be more 99th percentile scores in the mix. But the challenge is that they pushed us all to May. So even if there is a larger pool of students, the fact of the matter is that we're still going to be in the testing room in larger numbers because it's the first test of that type that we're allowed to take. So it still could pose some challenges in May. Now, the other reason is that they didn't want anybody criticizing their test, which, I think it might be a fair balance of both. So That's something that I was looking forward to this session in particular because I was so excited after talking about this since 2012. We've known since 2012 that the SAT was changing, and knowing about it since then, I was like, yes, I finally get to go see this test, to go take it in the testing room and see, how it aligns with all the practice materials we've received. And the fact of the matter is that I was barred along with a lot of other test prep pros that I know. I got a bunch of emails last week and connected with a few of my peers. And we all, I think, based on our ages, were dismissed, as it were, from this last test. So unfortunately, I can't give you any specifics as to what that test looks like in the testing room as compared to the practice materials. But what I can do is give you a sense of the ACT versus the SAT, the new SAT, which is something that I actually received quite a few questions on from one parent in particular. And there's like 4 different questions that came down. So I'm going to definitely be sharing that. Awesome. And I'm seeing some of you come through with your grades. Lots of juniors here. Love it. Love it. Awesome. Well, if you have any questions that you would like me to answer as a part of today's session, you are welcome to enter them at this point. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and then dive into those questions that were provided to me by the father who emailed me. And please know I host these every month. If you have a question and you want me to answer it, you'll get a video replay, even if you can't attend live. You can go ahead and send me an email, and I will go ahead and type my email address here just so you can see it. It's Lauren, Lauren, and I already said I shouldn't be typing and talking at the same time, higherscorestestprep.com. In the future, feel free to email me questions and I will answer them. And now that you're registered for every monthly Q&A. So get a little reminder, hey, this is coming up. And if you have a new question, because this is an ongoing thing. This is not a, hey, I learned everything I needed to know in one session and I'm done. It's a beast that grows, that's for sure. And especially with the changes that are coming to the test, to have come to the tests, and also are coming to the FAFSA. For those of you who are juniors this year, when you become a senior next year, academic year, at the end in the fall of 2016, you're actually able to do your FAFSA sooner, which is going to be a really awesome thing. And if you don't already listen to the podcast, please know next week's episode is all about that change that's coming to the FAFSA. So by all means, subscribe to the College Checklist podcast so that you can get that information right when it comes out and be prepared. You don't have to do anything right away, but that will be something for you to consider in the fall of next year. So just so you know, it's coming. Now, as I said, I am going to jump over and answer a question that I got via email. But if you have questions, please do type them in. And once I finish answering this other parent's question, I'll come back to the live questions that are coming in. And hello, Julietta. Nice to see you. If you do have questions, go ahead, type them in, and I'll get to them after I've answered these other ones. Like I said, it's just me over here. So I am like doing tech duty and delivering information and typing. Multitasking is actually not my thing. So bear with me. There may be some slight downtime. So kind of coming over here to the questions that I received. I got an email from a parent I've actually been talking with for a long while now. His name is Mark. And Mark asked 3 questions, but Mark, I broke it down into 4 because I think it's easier for me to answer them this way. So the first question is the only reason to take the SAT over the ACT because the SAT has merit scholarship recognition, and with that comes merit money to several colleges. Also, might one just do better taking the SAT? So, actually, I'm gonna move that last bit to the next question because I think it dovetails there. So let's address which test you should take. All right, now. This used to be a much different discussion. So please know I'm speaking now forward. The current 1600 revamped, redesigned, however you want to talk about it, SAT as compared to the ACT. All right. So if you are a student who regularly scores in the 90th plus percentile and you took the PSAT in the fall of your junior year, then yes, you should consider taking the full length SAT for that merit money. Now, there is another way to get merit money from your ACT, but let's just deal with the National Merit Scholarship. Okay, so when you take the PSAT in the fall of your junior year, and that is the only test that counts for this, it's the National Merit Scholarship qualifying test. So you see PSAT/NMSQT, that's what all those letters mean. That test starts the ball rolling, as it were, to get you the national merit recognition. Now, national merit is a really tough nut to crack. It's not just based on your metrics. There are a lot of other elements that go into this. And frankly, they're not very open about what it is that they're looking for. Sure, scores are a part of it, but we're also looking, it's curved by state. So where you live, your scores might get you different things. You can be a recognized student, you can be a semifinalist, and if you're a semifinalist, you have to go through this process to become a finalist. And of the semifinalists, not everybody makes it to the finalist. And how they make that cut is a little unclear. So I think, for me, that's a little bit of a long shot. It's a lot of work that if the ACT is the better test for you, then you should just take that. If you really want to go for it, of course, I'm not one to say, hey, don't work hard. If you really want to go for it, absolutely you can. You really have to decide, and I put this out there to every parent, whether you're a 90th plus percentile student or not, you have to decide what you're going to say yes to in this college admissions world. There are a lot of things to say yes to. And there are a lot of things that you can say no to and still get into a good college. So what I always encourage parents to do, and students, you have these conversations as a family. Is this something we're going to go for? Yes or no? Make the decision then with all the facts and then commit either yes or no, shut the door. So otherwise, this is going to get really overwhelming really fast. If you say yes to everything, all AP classes, all IB classes, you take both tests, you're going for national merit, you're playing sports, you're in activities, it starts to snowball. So we want to make sure, we're selecting the things that are going to really enrich our students' life or give our students an edge. And of course, testing is part of that, giving you an edge. And any prep that goes along with that, of course, is going to help feed into that. So make those decisions wisely. Consider where your family is. My dog is going nuts. Oh, I'm sorry. She sees someone out on the street. So make those decisions wisely and choose what's right for you, and then stand by those decisions. So if you need help with anything along the way regarding that, I'm happy to help. But basically, yes, if you do want national merit scholarships from the National Merit Scholarship Corporation, then you do need to take the SAT to verify your PSAT score. So if your PSAT score isn't high enough to get you national merit, then no worries, you don't have to take the SAT. But if it is, you have to prove in the real test, in the full-length test, that you, in fact, did get that score. I am so sorry about her barking. Just one second. I think we're in the clear. We're not. Sorry, it's a Chihuahua. It's so hard to get her to be quiet, but we'll just keep plugging away here. Now, I did also mention there's another way to get merit aid. So merit aid is also a branch of financial aid that comes from the school. So sometimes you'll see it listed as a in-school scholarship. So you apply to a college and you apply to a scholarship within that school. It is merit aid. It is not the need-based aid, which comes from your FAFSA application, and where the government determines just how much how much aid you need. This is on the flip side. It's completely based on your metrics, who you are, what you bring to the school, and it's a way that they can pull you to them. And that is something that I absolutely encourage all families to research as a part of their college search. In fact, My dad and I, who happens to be Higher Scores CFO, we hosted a 1-hour masterclass where we talk about the 3 ways to turn your test scores into cash for college. And this need-based aid alternative, the merit aid, is one way to do it. And a lot of families go, well, we don't have these super high scores. You don't need super high scores to leverage this 2 of the 3 strategies. Now, one of those strategies is the PSAT. So I'm going to include a link to that right here. It's higherscorestestprep.com/cash. It's a $7 1-hour course that I think can get you thousands. And if you just watch the little 2-minute video that's an intro, I'll show you how 2 SAT points can turn into $40,000 in cash for college. It's a big deal. And so again, that's higherscorestestprep.com/cash. And if you watch the video there, it'll give you a brief overview. If you're interested in joining in, I'd love to have you as a part of that masterclass because I think it's really informative and kind of gives you a good sense of the alternative ways to get merit aid. Alrighty, so that was an answer to Mark's question number 1. We got 3 more to go. And again, if you're just joining us, please feel free to type in your question. I'm happy to answer it as a part of today's session, just kind of on the fly. Now, the second question was, would one perhaps do better just taking the SAT? If the SAT is becoming a lot like the ACT, are there really any differences between the 2 tests? And Mark, you're clearly a superstar. You get an A+. You've been listening to the podcast, I can tell. And you're right. The tests are becoming more similar. So some of the changes that have happened between the current, between the old 2400 SAT and the new / current 1600 SAT. The biggest changes, I would say, from a structural standpoint, the verbal sections now look pretty much exactly like the ACT English and reading sections. The difference there is the timing. The SAT is a little more generous. Not so much so that it would weigh me heavily to direct a student to one or the other, but that certainly is a consideration. The new SAT / current 1600 SAT has no guessing penalty. So in that way, it is very similar to the ACT. In fact, it's identical to the ACT. There is no guessing penalty. The other thing is that the essay is now optional on the SAT, but a lot of students see that and they go, oh, great, I can opt out. But it's optional for colleges to require it. So if you are in doubt, if you do not have the picture perfect full college list just down pat, you know exactly where you're applying and you know you're a good fit, you're probably going to want to take it. Because if you add any schools that require it, let's say you look at your list right now, none of them require the essay, you don't take it. If you then add one in your senior year, last minute, you have to go back and take the tests with the writing section. So my whole thing is, why not spend 40 or 50 minutes after you've already been up, gone through prep, are taking this test anyway? Why not just go for all of it, make sure you have everything and have your bases covered, and then you'll be covered in the event that you add another school in. I just think it's a much better use of time. That also is informed by my own personal experience in high school. I decided my senior year I was going to apply to a school very last minute, NYU. I think I decided like 2 weeks before the applications were due. I had all my essays done for other schools, so I just did a little finagling, but I had all of the requirements down, packaged them together, sent them off, and that's the school I ended up going to. So, I was able to do that because I had my bases covered. Now, if you're not into doing that, if you want to say, no, we're not going to do that, that's fine. Just do it with open eyes. Make sure you understand, what may happen down the line if you do choose that path. I'm getting a message from someone that they can see me, but they can't hear me. Shoot, this is saying that I am coming through. If anybody, I'm going to ask if anybody else having that issue with audio. So if you can hear me, please just go ahead and type in yes, can hear you. If you can't, then I think it's recording. So Joe, if you can't hear me, I can send you a video replay with audio. So if anybody else is having trouble with that, please let me know. I don't see, looks like everybody's on. So, okay, so Melissa's saying she can hear me. Yeah, I think, Joe, it might be something on your end. So I can always send the video replay with the audio down the line. Sorry about that. Some of these systems, it's hard to know, but if other people can't hear me and it looks like it's broadcasting here, I think it is on your side. So I apologize. Anyway, kind of getting back to it. So that's the deal with the optional essay. What I will say is that the SAT essay, this new one with the revamp, I think it's harder than the ACT essay. The ACT essay is similar to an AP synthesis essay where you take three perspectives, you sort of weave them into one cohesive argument. You can do it without outside knowledge. The SAT essay is similar to the rhetorical analysis essays on the APs. And for that, it's helpful to have language about rhetorical analysis to help you, to sort of back you up. So that's something that I definitely think is going to be harder for a lot of students. Now, if you're an AP student and you're comfortable with both styles of essay, I wouldn't say that you pick your test based on that, but it might sway you one way or the other or make one less scary. Like the SAT might seem less scary because you have a handle on that information. Now, the other two things that are going to sort of differentiate you for the new SAT, current SAT, 1600 SAT, the math sections. There are two. So the SAT is a 4-test multiple choice test. So you have writing and reading, and then 2 math sections, one of which you cannot use a calculator on. And even for students who are very good at math, sometimes, and I would say especially for students who are very good at math, sometimes they've been away for so long from doing math by hand that it's hard for them to go back. On the SAT math, with no calculator, students have to be really rock solid when it comes to interpreting word problems and writing algebraic equations to solve those word problems. We really have to have a mastery of that to do well in that section. On the ACT side, there is a math section, of course, but you can use your calculator all the way through. Now both tests do deal with the same level of math, all the way up to sort of basic trig. So that's all fair and equal between the two. But the ACT also has a science section, which I know a lot of people get nervous about. They go, oh my gosh, the ACT science, I don't know about that. I don't feel comfortable with that. The fact of the matter is, it's not about science knowledge. It really isn't. It's about, can you read charts and graphs? Can you interpret charts and graphs? And if you can do the science section, even if you're not the best science student. So I think that's going to become sort of the tipping point between these two tests. The main one is, would you rather do a science section that's not really about science, or for the ACT, or would you rather do math without a calculator on the SAT? And if you are going to take the essay, then of course that comes into the conversation as well. Timing is still a little more generous on the SAT, but again, like I said before, not so much so that I'm telling students to go one way or the other based solely on that. There are other things that are bigger factors, I would say. Alrighty. So that was question 2. Moving on to question 3. Mark, I'm glad you asked these questions. They're really, really insightful. And I think, like I said, you're a superstar student. I can tell you've been listening and reading my emails and listening to the podcast. They're really great. So the third question that Mark asked was, if the SAT is graded on a curve and if most do poorly on the test compared to the past, will it matter? Or would it be a bad idea to take the SAT thinking that the curve will nullify a relatively poor score compared to the old SAT? So, Mark, I don't completely understand your question. So if I missed the mark entirely, please feel free to follow up with another email. I'm happy to expand upon this. But I think maybe there's a misunderstanding about the curves. All of these tests are curved: the SAT, new and old, and the ACT. And that's what makes them standardized tests that we're correcting for different levels of difficulty between the exams, and we're spreading those scores out evenly. And that's what makes it a useful measure for colleges, because GPAs vary wildly, right? As we all know, in one school, teachers' grading policies differ dramatically. Now imagine in a district what that looks like. Now multiply that across a state, and then multiply that across a country, and then take it international. It's like we have so many teachers informing the GPA, and so many teachers who are dramatically different in what they consider, A work and B work, and how much extra credits allowed and all of that. So to offset that, we have these standardized exams. Every student who goes in sees the exact same thing. Every student who sees the exact same thing in a test day is graded across a curve and placed in position, their score, against their peers, which helps correct for the level of difficulty shifts that absolutely have to happen from test to test. They can't make the exact same level of difficulty. So because of that, the new tests, the old tests, I think the percentiles are going to remain fairly steady. I don't think we're going to see dramatic differences. The one place I would say that has changed this year is the ACT essay. They've had some serious issues integrating that this year. It was the last change that came to the ACT. It debuted in September of 2015, and that first test was way off. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. I've read some of the essays. There have been some internal issues that has been relayed to me through some comments from people who work within the organization. So I think that that's something that you need to be aware of, but it's not something that's going to dramatically affect anything in the future, right? So they seem to have figured it out for the ACT essay. But the essays are always the non-standardized portion of these tests. They try to standardize them, but the fact of the matter is that grading an essay is subjective. It's not filling in a bubble and saying this is right or this is wrong. So that element of the test is always going to have some variability. And I think colleges know that, and they can see the essays. So if they think that a grade looks off, they can go and read the essay itself and verify for themselves that it was correct or incorrect. So, yeah, I don't think that the curves are going to, one's going to be better than another. I think you pick the test that's the right fit for your student, both the test itself, the test dates, and how it lays out, and then you go from there. Larissa, I see your question. I'm going to get to that. It's a great one. I'm going to get to that after question 4 from Mark. So Mark's fourth question, and I'm sorry, I'm going to take a sip of water because I've been talking a long time. Alrighty. So Mark's fourth question was, should one select a test partly based on the idea that certain folks, such as myself, might be able to teach better how to take one test over the other? And Mark said, for instance, you seemed more comfortable with the SAT than the ACT. Not sure why I think that, but I did. And again, superstar, you've been listening. I don't think it's about my ability to teach the test, but in terms of my own personal preference, I did like the old SAT more. I've taught both tests for 9 years now. I have my students get amazing results. So I don't think it's an effectiveness of teaching method, but the old SAT was a much slower paced test. I do not like being penned into a corner and having to work quickly. I'm thorough and I like to check my work. And that's where the SAT, where I liked that more. Now I have techniques that help me on the ACT as well. And I'm usually scoring a 34 or a 35 when I go take the test, which I still do. So anybody who listens to the podcast knows I still go and take these exams regularly. And so, yeah, 34, 35 is pretty standard for me on the ACT. And usually when I go back and look at the answers that I missed, I'm like, because I was going so fast. And that's the one thing that I just don't like about the ACT. But I'll tell you, some students like it. They want to go fast. They want to lean into it. They want to get done. And so they like kind of that supercharged feel as opposed to the like, it's less so now, but the slower pace of the old SAT. New SAT, it's still it's somewhere between the old SAT and the ACT in terms of pacing. Alrighty. So I hope that answers your question, Mark. I think that no matter what, you should always be picking the test that's the right fit for your student, whatever that is, and for whatever reasons you believe it. And I'm always happy to. I do free consultations. So if you have questions and you want to have them answered, and we can talk through, how your student thinks, how they work, their history, their academic history, their activities, and what the right schedule might be so that they're not overlapping too much. I'm always happy to help. I'm going to go ahead and write this in. I have free 30-minute consults. And to get that, you just go to Higher Scores Test Prep. Oops, I can't spell. .com/help. So again, that's higherscorestestprep.com/help. And if you go there, we set up a phone consultation, free 30 minutes. I help you sort of break down what's going on. That said, right now, we're in March of 2016. I will not be advising that any student take the new SAT until fall of 2016 at the earliest. And the reason I don't is because I haven't seen it yet. And if I haven't seen it in the testing room, I am really wary to send a student in there to take it, because now all the pros are taking it in May. So that curve's going to be totally whacked out. And the fact of the matter is, if we don't know what it looks like in the testing room, I can't advise students based on what I've seen in the practice material until I know that what's in the practice material actually shows up on test day. If I can't say for certain that I know what shows up on test day, then I can't advise students. And I think anybody who says that they have a handle on the new SAT right now is lying, unless it's Khan Academy, because they're working with College Board. Even them, I doubt that they're going to give you sort of the hacks and the tips and the tricks. So I want to make sure that I'm being really honest and upfront about that, because there are a lot of people who are selling books, some of which were published before we even had a full-length, a new SAT from College Board. Before we had a practice test, people were publishing books based on what College Board had written loosely, because it meant that they could be the first to market. But the problem with being first to market is that it could be wrong, and I'm not willing to take that chance. What I tell everybody is I can be a guinea pig, but there's no way that a student should be a guinea pig, especially when the ACT is sitting right there. It's so similar. This year, just go with the ACT, avoid the new SAT, and if you do want to take that new SAT, you might consider you might consider doing so, in the fall at the earliest, or just not at all. Maybe just really focus on the ACT, get it done, and be done. And that's fine too. So let me pull up my questions here. I know I had a few. Ooh. All right. I don't know why I can't drag these things. Mark as a question. There we go. All righty. So Larissa asked, do SAT and ACT require different preparation? So I'm going to say yes, they do. SAT and ACT, especially in the past, definitely did. The new tests are still different enough that while the verbal stuff will do double duty, while it will work for both, the science is very different than two math sections, one of which doesn't have a calculator. So those elements and the essays too are definitely going to push you into different programs. And that's something that, there are going to be ways for us to bridge that gap faster between the two tests if a student wants to do both. But I would still advise that students prepare fully for the test that they want to take with the material for the appropriate test. And especially with a program like mine, all of my programs have score-specific strategies. So what I do is I give students a quota of questions to answer based on the score that they're looking for. So to sort of put this into context, a student who's looking for a 21 in English needs to answer a different number of questions than a student looking for a 33, right? And that might sound funny, but really when you get down to it, it's about accuracy. And what helps us bump our accuracy, well, we have to know the concepts being tested, right? So grammar rules, punctuation rules, rhetorical skills, that sort of thing. And then we also need to answer those questions right. And by taking a little more time, you can improve your accuracy on the questions that you're answering and kind of leave the other ones to you put in your letter of the day for the ACT, which will now also work on the SAT. So you just bubble in the same letter, you pick up some bonus points. So it's kind of a cake and frosting scenario. The questions you're attempting, the questions that you're going for, the ones that you need to get right, that's the cake, right? And we need the cake because frosting by itself might be delicious, but it doesn't stand on its own. It needs something to go on. So the questions that you're answering that you're really focusing on, you want to take your time with, you want to make sure, you're answering them appropriately. And then that letter of the day scenario, that's the icing. Any extra points you pick up there are going to help you, but you don't want just the icing. Some of you might not be going along with me on this scenario because some of you I know probably love the icing only and forget the cake, but bear with me, we're building a cake here and you need the cake to have a cake and then the icing can go over. So that's why I highly recommend being test specific. Now, what some students then do is they go, okay, I mastered this one. I got the score I wanted on, test X. Now I want to go take test Y. Well, usually when you do that, you don't need full prep all the way over again. You may opt to, but sometimes you can sort of shortcut it and get to the heart of the matter faster. So that is probably something that I will mix in for students once I've seen the SAT. As I've said, I haven't decided if I'm going to even teach this new test because I haven't seen it yet. So once I see it and I've sort of judged it for what it is, I think what I'll end up doing is creating a suite of courses for the SAT specifically, and then create interim courses. So courses that will help students flip faster from the SAT to the ACT or vice versa. That's where I'm thinking we're going, but I can't confirm that fully until I've seen it. So I hope that answers your question, Larissa. Alrighty. And then Joe asked a question. So hi, Lauren. First off, let me just say I love listening to your podcast. Very helpful. Thank you. I'm so happy to have you as a listener. My son is currently a junior in high school. My question is, since most colleges only require applicants to submit one set of test scores, would it be more beneficial for my son to take the ACT rather than the SAT? This year, I think yes. So before, when the tests were dramatically different, I would encourage students to take both, because if you could do both really well, then you could sort of show this third skill that neither test tested, which was that you can cater your knowledge to the scenario, right? So you may not be like, for me, I was not necessarily naturally inclined to take the ACT, but when I did equally well on the ACT as the SAT, it sort of showed like, hey, she can play the game in whatever ballpark she's put in. Her knowledge is not dependent on the format of a test. So that was the old way. I think now it's going to become a one and bust kind of thing. Like, just do one and get out of there. So I think this year, Joe, it might be different next year. If I have someone who's a junior next year asking me this question, it may be a different answer. But right now, I just don't see any reason to deal with the uncertainty of the new SAT. I just don't, because the ACT has its problems, right? We're really low on material that is actually appropriate. And everybody should hear me when I say the new ACT book published in January of 2016 by the official test maker that is available on Amazon is bad. It's exactly the same as the one that was published in 2011. The prompts are not correct. The science is way too easy, and the reading does not include dual reading. Now, I will tell you that I also use that book, but the way I use it in my course, my students know that it's not 100% what they're expecting to see on test day. And so we sort of bounce between that and some great material that's out there. And by sort of mixing it, they end up understanding what the test maker is doing and also preparing, with other materials, knowing that that's not put out by the official test maker. So you need to be working with somebody who understands that what's in that book is not what students are seeing on test day. And I do know that, of course, because I take these tests. And I also would encourage you to supplement with other materials. There's some available online. ACT just totally redesigned their website. I think it looks awful because now I can't find anything. But their online test prep questions are actually pretty good. They're appropriate to what a student might see, plus the full-length test that they can download there now, the 2015-2016 one. That is the only full-length practice test available that's exactly akin to what a student would see on test day. So just be aware of those changes. If you do choose to go it alone, this is a tough year to do it because we don't have great materials, but ACT has promised us a new book late spring. I heard July of 2016 was kind of the late date. So hopefully we'll be getting it sooner rather than later. And of course, you bet your bottom dollar, I'm going to be mixing it in the second I have it in hand because we need better materials. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Joe. And I saw another question come along here from Julietta. Julietta asks, what specific kind of preparation is needed to excel in the ACT for a significant increment? So there's a few things in this question that I sort of want to deal with before we talk specifics about how to prepare. I find that a lot of students come in disappointed with their scores. So that's not uncommon. If they go and they take the test and they don't prepare, and even sometimes if they do prepare, sometimes they get stuck. They feel like they can't move ahead. If that's the case, if that's where your student is, there is hope. But I want to make sure that we're being really honest about the kinds of growth that we can see. I've had students go up 3 points, and it was an amazing, amazing growth for them. They worked really hard, and that's something to be celebrated. I've had students go up 7 points, and that was awesome for them as well, of course. And the thing is, where you are in the spectrum, where you're starting, will determine how much room there is to move. Students' academics, students don't usually outperform their GPA, or at least they don't in a significant degree. So if your student is coming in with, a GPA that's not quite aligned with their test scores, of course, that is definitely a place that we can grow from. But if we're kind of on point with that, and we could definitely talk specifics, you might get a couple more points, but if you're already kind of up against your natural edge, then there may not be as much room to grow. So I think that the college search is a huge part of this as well. Looking at a wide variety of schools with a wide variety of score choices. If you want to get into Harvard, you can get a 36, you can have a 5.0 and still not get in. If you look at other colleges and you come in with a 23 and a 3.2, you might get merit aid to go there because their numbers are a little bit lower. So I try and sort of bring a broader view of this because I think a lot of students just go, I have to get this amazing score that I don't know why, and it's not tied to a school. So I like to frame the conversation before we dive into the specifics because I think it's important. But when it comes to the kinds of preparation, I think students sort of fall into two pools. They're either one, go-getters. They super want to know everything, and they need help in two main areas. And that is academic review, because you can't answer a punctuation question if you don't know the punctuation rule. So, that's a big part of it. But the part that I think most programs ignore are those score-specific strategies. That's sort of the second pillar of prep. So there's these two pillars of prep: academic review and score specific strategies. And I, in my courses, dial it down to a subject level, um, specifically for English. This is your quota. Specifically for math, this is your quota. Because some students are stronger in one subject than another, I want them to be able to toggle between the two and push both their strengths and their weaknesses as high as possible, so that that overall composite ends up being higher, because the ACT score is an average. So everything needs to be as strong as possible. So that's why I don't do like, I'll just help you prep in math, because ultimately, if there are more points somewhere else on the board, we need to get them, because that's going to boost your ACT score overall. So there's students who need both of those. And those students tend to be the ones who maybe have a severe deficit somewhere in their academics. They know they don't know, and they know that they need that brush up. Or, as I said, they're that go-getter who really wants to make sure that they have dotted the I's and crossed the T's and has everything checked off on that list of things to know, and has that strategy in their back pocket as well as to how to handle these tests in the time crunch that's there. The other student, the second kind of student, might just need that score specific strategy. That might be all they want to deal with. They sort of go, I know what I know at this point, and I really don't want to go into that anymore. I don't want to brush up on those academics. I just want to really focus on the test taking skill, right? It's not about the academics. It's about how to take a test. And for those students, I do have another course that's available. So that first kind of student would be my complete prep course. I believe that, it's going to take time to really absorb the lessons. So it should be completed in 6 to 12 weeks. I err on the side of 8 to 12, if at all possible, because we want to give students a chance to step back and go, okay, I've remembered, all this stuff. It's settled in. If they just want to go the score specific strategies, that can be shorter. So right now, if students taking the April test, we're about 5 weeks out. Whoop, I just hit my mouse and something jumped. We're about 5 weeks out from that test. The quick prep course is a deep dive on those score specific strategies. There's also the cram plan, which is a cram plan. It's 1 hour, and it has a 4-day study guide that comes with it, as compared to more like 5 hours of video tutorials and a 10-day study guide that goes with the quick prep. So depending on your range, whatever you're looking for, I've designed my program after tutoring for 9 years now, and it's a significant discount from what it costs to have me sitting across the kitchen table. No matter how you prepare, you do want to have somebody who understands these exams as they are now. So as I said before, there's not really that much good material on the market for the ACT right now. So it's kind of imperative you work with a pro, because if you go on your own, you're not going to be able to find the materials that line up with the test. Now that could change after July at the latest, after that new 4th edition of the ACT study guide comes out from the test maker. But to try and do it by yourself is going to be really hard right now. It's just the way it is. I mean, ACT is like 3 years overdue for a new book. That's just the facts, and they know it. And all they had to do this year for me to just say, full tilt ACT all the way for forever, is to give us a new book. And they didn't. So, we're sort of rolling with it. But if you want to look, Julietta, at what I offer, I'm going to just include a link here, higherscorestestprep.com/courses. You can see what's offered through those. I think it's a good place to start. And of course, do thorough research. All my stuff is online. There are people out there, of course, who do tutoring to come to your home, but it'll give you a good sort of starting point to know what maybe your student needs, and then you can go from there. So to see our courses, visit higherscorestestprep.com/courses. So yeah, if you're interested, we are, as I said, we're about 5 weeks out from April. We are about, I think 14 weeks out from June. So if you are thinking of doing full prep for that course, now's a good time because then you can also work in a full break for your finals week, which is important. So having a little buffer can really help with that course. So, alrighty. So that's all the questions that have been asked so far. If you have any other questions, please type them in quickly. I'm going to just go ahead and hop over to my email just to see if anybody else, you know what, I'm going to grab it on my phone here just to see if anybody else typed anything in. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. And please know, we do this every month. And so if you're interested in joining us in the future and asking a question, then, if you're watching the replay on the YouTube channel or whatnot, just come on over to higherscorestestprep.com/register. And I've committed to doing this through 2016. And if anybody, if everybody's liking it, then we'll continue beyond that. But I just know it's so hard. Sometimes you have just one question and it's so hard to get into counselors in school. And so I just want to make sure that I'm a resource wherever I can be. I also am going to post in the show notes a PDF of the College Checklist podcast. This is another free resource that I put out, all about all things college admissions, basically. So it details the first 54 episodes. I just pushed episode 70 live today. So I clearly need to go back and update this, but this will be a good place for you to start. I sort of categorize everything between getting into college, career and college success, paying for college and test prep tips. So if you want to go through and find a category that you want to sort of exhaust, it's a good way to do it. Great. I see Joe had another question come through. Oh no, I lost it. Where'd it go? There we go. Alrighty. So Joe asked, what would you suggest would be an appropriate amount of time to set aside per day for your prep course? So for mine, it depends on what you're doing. For the shorter form courses, it's 2 hours a day. The quick prep does include a 4-hour practice test at one point. So it does vary a little bit depending on the day. So the quick prep comes with a 10-day study guide. The cram plan comes with a 4-day study guide. That if that sort of gives you a sense. So it's 8 hours, 20 hours. The full length prep course, the complete package, is actually 3 hours a day for 12 weeks. It's a 24-day syllabus. So that's 24 study days, by the way, which is why I say 12 weeks. That's 2 meetings a week. But here's the thing with all of them. The homework is included as a part of that day. So there's no work to be done after the fact. So if you're looking at like an in classroom course or an online course that's taught live, usually those courses have homework associated with them, which they won't tell you, or they won't, put as a part of the package. They'll just say, it's a 24-hour course. And then, they don't factor in the fact that doesn't include the full length practice tests. It doesn't include any of the homework that's assigned outside. So it sounds like a lot, but I think my students really like it. And that's why I like that 8 to 12 week range, because students are doing 2 to 3 meetings a week in that full course. If they do the quick prep, I named these things. I should know what they are. The quick prep, if you do that one, it's 10 days. So, you can do 4 hours, 2 days a week, and of course leverage weekends as well. And the nice thing is, because it's online, you can do it all when it fits your schedule. If something comes up and you have to move a meeting, you absolutely can. You have that flexibility, and you can do it on Saturday morning in your jammies, or you can do it, late at night. I know that in high school, that would have been awesome for me. I was a night owl. I couldn't go to bed anyway, so I could have done something productive. So that's how that works, and it varies. And so I'm happy to chat with you, Joe, about that, and answer your questions on that and see how it might fit your son's schedule. Okay, yeah, Joe, I think, are you Adam's dad? If you are Adam's dad, because I don't have a last name here, what I mentioned was that you could do, I want you to have him go through or day 13 before the April test, and then everything else up into the June. So I know that we're doing a little bit of a split test, which is also the nice thing about this course. It's so flexible, and you have access to it for 18 weeks, or sorry, 18 months. So if you need to come back into it later, you absolutely can. Got it. Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So, Joe, I can follow up with you if you want some help. But I would recommend doing, 3 hours daily. I would separate the meetings if you can, because students do need time to like decompress and make sure they absorbed it all. I might not try and get it all in before the April test. I might sign up for June as well and aim for through day 13, because day 13 on the syllabus is the day after the practice test. So we'd be able to do the full practice test, have scores, have some time to sort of break down those scores, brush up anything you needed heading off into the April exam, and then do the remaining 11 meetings between the April exam, maybe take, a week off, and then do them between the April exam and the June exam at a slower pace, just so he has enough under his belt that he feels comfortable on that first test, and then is able to complete the course as well, heading into the June test with enough room, of course, to fit in finals. So I know it's a little bit of like a puzzle, but I'm happy to help you with that too. If you have any questions, if that doesn't make any sense, we can talk specifics for sure. And then Julietta, what is your opinion of the new ACT online course from January 2016? I have not gotten in and looked at that course, but what I will tell you is that in the past, I have received students who have taken that course. So they've purchased it, gone through it, came over to me, and that was with the old one, admittedly. But here's my problem with test prep provided by the test prep provider. There's a reason I'm not teaching in a school, and it's because I'm not teaching academic concepts to their depth, right? I'm teaching students how to learn things that they need in the most efficient way to take this test well. And I'm teaching them those strategies, those hacks that a lot of students don't really think about, that are going to help them get their higher score. So the strategy side of it, I don't think a test prep provider is going to teach. I don't see them talking about ways to game their own test. And that's where I get a little wary and skeptical of, what Khan Academy is putting out. I'm sure the academic side is great, but when it comes to how to do this faster, how to get the points quicker, how to make sure you're being accurate and all the way through, I'm not sure that's what they're teaching. So that's my one hang up. But at the same time, if your student wants to just focus on academics, then you can go that route. I would think that they're very safe when it comes to that. And I will have to get in there. I didn't realize that they revamped the course in January. I'm wondering if maybe that came with the new website design, and that kind of got buried because, as I said, I can't navigate the new system. But I will dive in and take a look at what they're offering and sort of give some feedback on that. So if you listen to the podcast, I'm going to do an episode in the future about the test prep options through the test prep providers. So I will definitely cover that. So thank you very much. I was going to do it for Khan Academy. I'll just do it for both of them now. And then Raven, are there any books other than the ACT book out there that could help me? So Raven, be careful. That ACT book, I only give students tests out of test 4 and 5 in that book. 1 through 3 are way too easy. If you look at the reviews of that book online, you'll see a lot of test prep providers saying don't use 1 through 3. They're just far too simple. They're a great training ground, great place for you to get your feet under you and to start to understand the mechanics of the ACT. But don't think that you're going to see something that simplistic. It's going to be closer to the 4 and 5. There's actually a number of free materials out there, full-length practice tests, that sort of thing. And you can find them at, these are 15 free test prep tools. And some of them include an episode of my show that I talk about 5 tips to higher ACT scores. And then some of them are actually materials from ACT. So if you go to higherscorestestprep.com, the number 15 and the word free, then you will find those. So higherscorestestprep.com/15 free. There's 15 free test prep tools there for you to sort of examine and work through. I use the McGraw-Hill book. Again, it's not 100%. The dual reading is not represented there. The essays are wrong, but the science is good, even though it looks a little different. That's been the hang up for me with a lot of other books that I've looked at. Nobody knows how to handle the science like ACT does. So I like the 10 practice tests by McGraw-Hill. And actually, you can find it at higherscorestestprep.com/Amazon. I've put together a list of the books that I like. If you're looking for resources for the subject exams, I like the Kaplan books. They're listed there as well. So that's a good place for you to start. But honestly, Raven, I'm so sorry I have to say this, but there's really not a lot that's out there right now. And it's been the biggest challenge this past year, more so than any other year, but it's been a problem for 2 years now, really. And ACT, every time I send an email, get a call, I know parents who are calling, they're not listening. And they haven't been listening. And to me, that's the issue with the ACT right now. There's issues with both of them. And I've, if you listen to the show, you might have heard me kind of get upset in one of my episodes recently where, I just get really frustrated when the test makers are just not making materials available. I think that's wrong. And so I'm hoping that this year that will change. This summer that will change. For those of you who have to take the test before the end of your junior year, which is every junior, between not taking and taking, you should be taking the tests before summer. Do your best with what's out there and just know that everybody's in the same boat, right? So everybody is dealing with the same stuff. And if at all possible, work with somebody who still takes these tests, who knows them inside and out, who can give you a little extra edge. And that really is the best advice I can give. So I'm sorry. I wish it were better, but there's some things we just don't have control over. And this is one of them. So because everybody's in the same boat, that's the good news. And hopefully, you'll find the resources on that page of use to you. They're pretty good. They're the best ones out there. So just be really careful about tests 1 and 3 in that red book, whether it's the one that was published in 2011 or the exact same one that was published again in 2016. Sometimes you just gotta go, what? But if you're here, you're getting the right information. And if you would share this with people, let them know. You're going to get the video replay of this session. It's also going to be live on my YouTube channel. So share it with people so everybody knows, what they're up against. So that looks like all the questions. Oh, nope. Raven had another question about how she could score high on the ACT with writing. She stresses about it. Yeah, it's Shreya, if you have a question, go ahead and ask it. Please do. I'm going to answer Raven's other question about the ACT writing, and then we'll get to yours. So, Raven, the writing test is challenging. Honestly, the best advice I can give is to practice. And that might sound really basic, but the fact of the matter is I find a lot of students will take a look at those examples, and do take a look at the examples on ACT's website. If you go in, you can, getting a phone call. Sorry. So if you go into act.org and go under test prep, there's like a sample questions area. You can see a few essays. So I would look at essay prompt, the ones that got a 4, a 5, and a 6, and start to sort of study what they do to get those scores. Now, a perfect score would be nice, but we might not all end up there. So, that 4 and that 5 are still going to have some really good suggestions as to how to lay out your essay and that sort of thing. And then once you've done that, take that prompt and go and write. Go and time yourself, not in the test room, but at home, and then walk away from it, come back the next day and read it with fresh eyes and compare it to what you already read on ACT's site. And that's going to give you sort of the information you need as to what you should do next time. If you're a stressed out timed writer, I used to do this all the time in high school. This would be the way I would practice in class writing, and I ended up getting pretty good at it. And I think if you can just be really honest about the work that you're doing, be honest with yourself about what you did well and also maybe where you could get better, I think that's going to really help you. And if you have an English teacher you can rely on as well, maybe for the grammar and punctuation, that sort of thing. See if you can get some time from them or some friends who you trust. That's going to be a great way to grow in your writing skills in general, and it will make you a better timed essay writer in school as well. So it's not time ill spent. It's going to help you in many arenas. Alrighty, so Shreya took the SAT on March 5th. Lucky girl. I was blocked from that test. Very sad for me. So yes. So what's next is you wait. And unfortunately, you're going to be waiting quite some time. They are slated to send the test scores out May 10th. I believe the May SAT, the next test, is May 7th. So you can see, even if you wanted to go in and take it again in May, you can, but you're not going to have any test scores to give you a sense of how well you did or what you need to work on. Plus, all of us test prep pros will be in that test with you, and that means that the curve is going to be diminished for students, or altered, I should say. So what I would recommend is either waiting to get your scores back and potentially taking the new SAT again in June, or focus on the ACT. And the reason I'm saying that is I have not advised any students to take the SAT this year. The fact that you did isn't bad necessarily. It just you rolled the dice a little bit because it was a brand new test, and that's fine. Once you get those scores back, you can decide what you want to do, or you can choose to flip to the ACT now. So those are sort of your two paths. Once you get those scores back, you're going to want to look at the colleges you're applying to and see how they compare, and whether it's the SAT scores or potentially an ACT score if you choose to flip to that. That's going to help guide your college search. So you can choose how to move forward. You can choose to find other schools maybe that you're a better fit for. If you come in way over the schools you're looking at, then you might want to mix in a couple of higher scored schools. Not necessarily better schools, that's not the measure of a school by any stretch, but you might want to consider, a school for which you might be a little more competitive. And then or if you come in under, you might want to do some research in that direction as well. So those would be the next steps that can inform your decision moving forward. If you do have colleges on your list, I would verify that what they need from you if they're going to be taking that first SAT. I haven't heard of any that aren't. I don't want to scare you, but the colleges are just at as much of a loss as parents and students are with this new exam. I don't know how that's going to manifest next year when you're applying. So just, check in, just make sure you're not seeing anything that looks funky, like they're not going to accept it. again, I don't think that will be the case. I think all colleges will still take both, but you just want to make sure because every school is different and there's like thousands of them out there. So I can't possibly know about every school that's on everyone's list. So that would be the next steps. If you choose to, you could take it again next fall as well. That's another option. So that's sort of where you get started. And I'm seeing another question here. So your resume, that's a great question. There's actually an episode of the college checklist about that. I believe it was episode 17. If I get that right. But yeah, there's an episode about that and what you should be including. Let me see. Nope, I'm sorry, it's not 17. It's 22. So this is about creating your high school resume, which if you're in Texas, you definitely need this, or if you're applying to schools in Texas. And then most schools are accepting them as supplementary information. So that would be one way to start. You can listen to that episode and get some great information. The other question was, why is the ACT better? The ACT, it's not that it's better, it's the known exam. The SAT is brand new this year, starting with the test you took. So that sometimes creates uncertainty, and I don't like uncertainty. So that's just my conservative approach. It's not wrong that you took it, and it's not that it won't be accepted. I don't want to make it sound like that. I just want to make sure that you understand that it's a newer exam, and that's why it's going to take 2 months for you to get your scores as opposed to 1, which it normally takes. And that's going to mean that you can't really take that May test with any sort of feedback. So I wouldn't recommend taking the May. If you're going to take it again, I would take June, or you could there's an October SAT as well. So that would be my advice. Or as I said, you can flip over to the ACT. Either way, it's whatever fits your schedule and whatever you think is the best choice for you. So let me just double check once more. Alrighty, I think we are done. So if you do have a question that wasn't answered, again, please feel free to shoot me an email. It's lauren@higherscorestestprep.com. If you're watching the replay and want to join in future sessions, higherscorestestprep.com/register. And thank you so much for being here with me. I really appreciate it. And I hope you guys have a fantastic night. Chat soon.